Most beginner BAs do not know what are the right questions that should be asked to the customer. So if you are a business analyst who is struggling with requirements gathering, then this video is for you. In this video, we'll explore the top 3 frequently made mistakes by business analysts while gathering requirements. We'll also see how do you need to prepare before a requirement gathering meeting? How do you need to conduct the requirement gathering meeting? And what are the documents that are created after a requirements gathering meeting? So before we get started, hit the notification bell and subscribe to my channel so that you can receive much more videos like this. So let's get started. Hi guys, this is Sajna Binil. I'm the founder of Business Analysis Hub, the fastest growing community of business analysts in India. When I first became a business analyst, requirements gathering was something that I struggled with a lot. Many professionals become a business analyst without proper induction or training to the role. And they feel requirements gathering is all about talking to the customer, listing down the requirements and passing it on to the tech team. It's not that easy because there are challenges associated with it. Challenge number 1, customer doesn't know what he wants. Yes, guys, 90% of our customers don't know what they want. Here, as a business analyst, you should play the role of an advisor. You are the right person to give suggestions to your customer as to what kind of features will actually make sense in his product. Challenge number 2, customer keeps on making changes to the requirement. Changes to a requirement impacts the delivery timelines of the requirements, results in a lot of rework and further derails your project. As a BA, you should be able to control the changes that are happening in your requirements. Challenge number 3, customer is not available for requirements gathering meeting. Yes, customer availability also becomes a major issue that derails the requirement gathering process. Many times when you schedule meetings with your customer for requirements, he is not available during those times, and due to which you have to reschedule the meeting. So in today's video, let us first look at the top 3 frequently made mistakes by business analysts while requirements gathering. So what are the frequently made mistakes by business analysts while gathering requirements? So the number 1 mistake beginner BAs make is that they do not do a business need assessment. Without doing a business need assessment, they directly jump onto requirements. When you do not do a business need assessment, there is no way you can validate that the requirements that you have collected from the customer actually adds value to the product. So business need assessment, very, very important. Stakeholder analysis. Beginner BAs, when they get into the project, they are introduced to the customer stakeholder by their project manager or the tech leads, due to which BAs do not spend any time to do a stakeholder analysis. They do not feel the need to identify additional stakeholders. But your project might be having additional stakeholders who should be involved in requirements gathering. Do a in-depth stakeholder analysis to identify the right stakeholders who can give you the requirements. If you're collecting requirements from wrong stakeholders, you'll end up getting wrong requirements. Mistake number 3, incorrect questions asked during requirements gathering. Most beginner BAs do not know what are the right questions that should be asked to the customer. In order to cover it up, they take their tech lead or project manager in all the requirement gathering meetings. So as a beginner BA, if you have been doing that, understand you are getting into a very dangerous situation. You have been hired as a business analyst solely to drive requirements in the project. So you are responsible for all the requirement gathering that should happen in the project. If you're involving your tech lead or your project manager in requirements gathering, then you are eating up their time as well. So involve them on a case-to-case basis. Like if your customer is expecting some estimates for a particular feature, get your project manager in that meeting. If a particular requirement that you're gathering from the customer is technically complex, or you need to understand the technical feasibility of that, then involve your tech lead in that. But rest all of the requirement gathering meetings should be solely driven by a business analyst. Now, let us look at what is the effective way of preparing for a requirement gathering meeting. So preparation is a very important step, guys. If your preparation goes wrong, the entire requirement gathering process falls apart. So the first step in preparation is, guys, read source documents carefully. Before you gear up for that meeting with your customer, try to understand the source documents that the customer has sent you. Source documents can be in the form of a scope document, BRD, the project charter. These are some of the documents you should read before you get into a meeting with the customer. Reading the source documents itself will give you several questions that you should be asking the customer during the requirements gathering. Next step, understand the scope. Understanding the scope of the project is one thing. Understanding the scope of your meeting is another thing. Okay. So understand what is in scope and what is out of scope of your project, and also define what is going to be in scope for the first requirement gathering meeting. Every meeting has a scope. You have to define the scope for the meeting. You can spend time discussing all the features of the product in one meeting, right? So what are the features that you're going to discuss in that meeting becomes the scope of that meeting. Step number 3, identify the correct stakeholders. It is very essential for a business analyst to identify correct stakeholders, or they will end up gathering wrong requirements. You speak to the wrong stakeholders, you get the wrong requirements. So keep that in mind, guys. A quick way in which you can identify stakeholders correctly is to quickly put an org model of your customer's organization and see who is doing what in the organization. It will give you a clarity as to who are the senior level guys with whom you're interacting and who is the ground level staff. Okay, that gives you complete clarity as to who is front-ending the requirements, as well as who are the users for whom you're building that application. Okay, so identify stakeholders by doing an in-depth stakeholder analysis. Step number 4, prepare a detailed agenda. The agenda for a meeting ties down the scope of the meeting, and it is very essential for you to create a detailed agenda so that the stakeholders are well informed before the meeting what are the discussion points. It helps the stakeholders prepare themselves on the discussion points, come to the meeting with the answers that you're looking for. Step number 5, prepare a question list. Do not enter a requirements gathering meeting without a question list. So it is very essential for beginner VAs to follow this step, because on the spot, on top of your head, you might not get the correct answers to be asked. So in our Business Analysis Hub, we have created a requirement elicitation template, which has a bunch of questions created for different modules. So the RET template helps you build a logical thinking as to what are the right kind of questions that you should arrive at when you're looking at a product feature. Step number 6, work on logistics. Yes, if you're planning a meeting with the customer and you do not take care of the logistics, it will derail your meeting. So when it comes to logistics, always check whether all the things that are required for the meeting are in place well before the meeting, like booking the meeting room, seeing that the meeting room has adequate facilities, whiteboard. If you need video conferencing facility, check if it has the appropriate facility. All of this has to be taken care well before the meeting. Step number 7, send out meeting invites well in advance. It is very essential for you to block a time with your customer well in advance so that your requirement gathering can be completed as per the scheduled time. Now that we have looked into how to prepare for a requirement gathering session, let us see how can you conduct an effective requirement gathering meeting. What are the key things that we need to keep in mind? So I always tell my students, start with the agenda of the meeting. Okay, start your meeting with an agenda, and do not bombard your customers with requirements questions. Okay, start with the proper agenda so that they are very clear of what is going to be discussed. Step number 2, ask questions. Well, you might feel that asking questions is very simple, but that's not the case. It is an art in itself. How you ask questions and what you ask questions all determines the response that you get from your customer. So in our practical labs, we conduct role play of requirement gathering sessions. So in these role plays, I have observed that students, when they are given a list of questions to be asked to the customer, they randomly go through the list and bombard the customer with questions without even waiting for a response from the customer. This is a very wrong way of gathering requirements, because then your customer has no clue what you're asking for. So do not bombard your customer with questions, but ask your questions in a slow-paced way and listen to the response. So I tell my students that always start your questions with a predefined list with which you have entered the meeting. So you have a question list ready with you when you entered the meeting. Start with that list, but go with the flow. What does that mean? When you ask the first question to your customer and your customer gives you a response, pay attention to that response. And within that response itself, there will be several questions that come to your mind. Okay, several new questions which you have not added in your list. Go with the flow and ask those extra questions. Commit to listen, very, very important. Effective listening skills is a very important skill a business analyst should have. So most business analysts get so involved in asking questions that they forget to listen. So if you do not listen to your customer, you will have to ask the same question again and again. This usually happens because beginner BAs are constantly thinking about what is the next question that they should ask. While your mind is thinking about the next question, you forget to listen to your customer, which is so important. So commit to listen. Next point, your question set should have more open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are a great way to elicit information. If you ask more of close-ended questions, that will result in a yes, no, a number, which we do not want. And lastly, pause and take notes. Yes, very important for us to pause whenever our customer gives us a response and take down notes. Do not forget to take down notes, guys. Most of the customers do not allow recordings. When recordings are not allowed, you need to take notes. Otherwise, you will forget most of the information. 60% of the information will be lost by the time you come out of the meeting. Next, we come to facilitation. What are the impediments that you might face while you are facilitating a requirements gathering meeting? Number one, customer comes up with the solution. This often happens. Some customers feel that they are smart enough to come up with a solution, or they forget that we are the solution providers. So we need to handle customers who come up with a solution themselves. Customer digresses from the agenda. This is another key area that impacts our facilitation. You will see many of the customers, while they are discussing on a particular feature, they jump to another feature and start talking about it, which completely takes the meeting haywire into a different space. So ensure while you are facilitating that your customer does not digress from the main agenda of the meeting. Next point, customers do not share much information. You will often meet such customers who are a little reluctant to share information. It might be due to security reasons or due to some other reasons, but they are not willing to share that much information. These are a couple of factors that impact our requirements gathering, and as a BA, we have to effectively handle this. Now let's come to the techniques. What kind of techniques you can use to gather requirements from the customer? Number one technique, interview technique. Most of you are already familiar with this technique. Interview technique allows you to gather requirements either one-on-one in face-to-face meetings or through conference calls or Zoom, Microsoft Team calls. That's the interview technique. Then we have the brainstorming technique. Brainstorming technique is generally used when you want to generate ideas from a group. Suppose your customer is totally confused of what should go into the product, what kind of features will be beneficial to the product. You can have a brainstorming session with the subject matter experts from his organization and conduct an idea generation. Document analysis. Document analysis is all about analyzing the documents that are given by the customer and gathering information or requirement from these documents. Interface analysis. Interface analysis is a frequently used technique by business analysts where you try to understand the interfaces of the existing application and come up with a list of questions that should be asked to the customer. Survey and questionnaire. Yes, survey technique is frequently used where we have a large user base. So you can prepare a quick survey and float it amongst the business users to figure out how a particular product or a service has been performing so far. Surveys are an effective tool to gather feedback and very commonly used in coming up with the next level feature for the product. Next technique, focus group. Focus group technique is used when you want to elicit ideas or opinions from a group. Focus group sessions are conducted with a set of pre-qualified participants. That's what differentiates it from the normal brainstorming. Now, as a BA, what are the key documents you will create as part of your requirements gathering session? Some of the documents that will be generated after the meeting include the MOM, the minutes of meeting. So as a BA, as soon as I finished the meeting, I had this habit of creating an MOM and sending it to all the stakeholders who participate in the meeting. An MOM keeps all the parties informed as to what was discussed and what's the next level action items on each party. So do an MOM, guys. If you have not been doing so far, definitely do it. The next document is draft document, draft requirements documents or user stories. So many times after the requirement session is over, if the requirements pretty much clear in your head, you can start with a draft version of your requirements document. Start putting it up, slowly you will see that requirements document shaping up. Start preparing a draft document. Do not wait till the last minute after you have gathered all the requirements, then starting the work on an FRD or an SRS doesn't make sense. So start work on your requirements document at a very initial stage while you're still gathering requirements from the customer. So these are a couple of tips and techniques that you can adopt to improve your requirement gathering processes. I hope this video was beneficial for you. So managing requirements in a project can be a daunting task for a beginner BA. So we have simplified the process using the Zero Tech Business Analysis Framework. In the Zero Tech Business Analysis Framework, we use templates for requirements gathering. We use templates for requirements documentation like FRD, user stories. Take a look at these templates, guys. So if you would like to know how to use these templates in your project, then meet me live in my next business analysis workshop, where I will break down the process step by step for you and give you the guidance that's required to launch a career in business analysis and become successful in this career. So meet me live in my next workshop. Click on the link below and register now, and I'll see you live. Bye.